The glow of her phone reads 3:17 a.m. Not that Jessica needs to look. She already knows it's that hour. The hour where every worrying feels permanent and every solution feels impossible. Her Brooklyn apartment sits in that weird darkness that isn't quite black anymore, the kind that comes right before dawn, when even the streetlights seem tired. She's been lying here for 3 hours, maybe 4. Her sheets are tangled around her legs like they're trying to hold her hostage. The air conditioning unit in her window hums and rattles, doing its best against a July heatwave that's turned the city into a brick oven. But the heat isn't why she can't sleep. Her phone lights up again. A Slack notification from her marketing director. Someone in Singapore needs an answer by morning. Jessica watches the notification fade to black, then picks up the phone anyway. Bad habit. The worst habit. 3:17 becomes 3:22 while she scrolls. First TikTok. A girl her age doing a complicated dance in a matching workout set. Jessica hasn't been to the gym in 2 weeks. Then Instagram. A former colleague just posted from some funding announcement party in San Francisco. He's wearing a hoodie that probably costs more than her monthly rent. The caption reads, "Dreams do come true. Team." Jessica wonders when she stopped believing that. Then LinkedIn. She doesn't know why she does this to herself at 3 a.m., but there it is. Another former coworker, now founding something at a startup Jessica had never heard of. He's writing about hustle culture and morning routines and how he wakes up at 4 a.m. every day to meditate. Jessica closes her eyes, opens them. 3:30-1. This is the thing nobody tells you about anxiety. It's not crying in the bathroom, or panic attacks, or any of the dramatic stuff movies show. It's this quiet paralysis where you know you need to sleep, but your brain decides to run a marathon instead. It's watching the ceiling fan spin while your mind replays every conversation from the last 3 years, looking for the one where you said something wrong. Tomorrow is Tuesday. But tomorrow isn't just Tuesday. Tomorrow is the Gunderson pitch. Jessica has been preparing for this meeting for 6 weeks. Gunderson is a major retail chain, 47 locations across the Northeast, and they're looking for a new marketing agency. If Jessica's firm lands this account, it's a game changer. If Jessica lands this account, it's a promotion, a corner office, the kind of thing that gets you on those LinkedIn posts she hates scrolling past. But if she bombs it, the thought arrives like a text message she can't ignore. Asterisk, what if I bomb the pitch? Asterisk, her stomach tightens. Then the follow-up arrives right on schedule. Asterisk, what if they ask about the Q3 numbers and I freeze? Asterisk, then the big one. The one that always comes. Asterisk, what if I'm not cut out for this anymore? Asterisk, she's 32 years old with a master's degree and a resume that took her a decade to build. And at 3:47 a.m., none of that matters. She's just a person in a hot apartment, scared of tomorrow. Here's what science actually knows about this moment. When Jessica asks herself, what if in this way, what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? Her brain doesn't know the difference between a real tiger and a hypothetical career disaster. The same region lights up. The same chemicals flood her system, cortisol, adrenaline, the whole fight-or-flight response, designed to help her outrun predators on the savannah, now triggered by a PowerPoint presentation that's still 12 hours away. A 2023 study from Columbia University tracked this exact pattern. They found that the average professional spends 2 hours and 14 minutes every single day ruminating on negative what-if scenarios. 2 hours. That's 30 full days a year. A month of your life spent worrying about things that haven't happened and mostly never will. The same study tracked those worries. 93% of them never materialized. Not even close. But Jessica doesn't know that yet. She just knows her heart is racing, and the sun's still up, and she has to be presentable in 5 hours. She switches to her email. Bad move. There it is, the agenda for tomorrow's pitch, sent by her boss at 11 p.m. because her boss never sleeps either. The first item, Q3 performance review, open floor for client questions. Jessica's throat goes dry. She imagines the conference room, the long table, the faces of strangers waiting for her to say something smart. Asterisk, what if they hate it? What if I stutter? What if they can tell I'm scared? Asterisk, the thoughts come faster now. She's not even generating them anymore. They're just playing on a loop, like a song stuck in her head. Her hands are cold despite the heat. Her chest feels tight. She's been awake for nearly 20 hours and her body is screaming for rest, but her brain won't shut up. This is the lie she believes. The lie we all believe. That worrying is preparation. That if she can just imagine every possible failure scenario, she'd be ready when one of them happens. That anxiety is a warning system worth listening to. But here's what's actually happening in her brain right now. The amygdala, that little almond-shaped cluster that handles fear, is firing constantly, and every time it fires, it tells her cortex, hey, there's danger. Her cortex, being the good team player it is, looks around for danger to justify the alarm. It finds the pitch. It finds the Q3 numbers. It finds all those LinkedIn posts, and it says, yep, danger confirmed. Keep worrying. It's a feedback loop. And Jessica is trapped inside it. For 12 a.m. She's been awake for 21 hours now. She's read the same email 3 times and retained nothing. She's watched the TikTok videos about people organizing their fridges and felt briefly calmer. Then worse. She's calculated that if she falls asleep right now, she could still get 3 hours and 48 minutes of rest, which is technically enough to function, probably. Maybe. She doesn't fall asleep. At 4:37. She gives up. She sits up in bed, reaches for the water glass on her nightstand, and drinks the whole thing in one go. The water is warm and tastes like the inside of the glass, but she doesn't care. She just needed to move, to do something other than lie there. Through her window, she can see the first hint of light. Not sunrise yet, just the sky going from black to deep blue. A garbage truck rumbles down the street below. Someone's dog starts barking. The city is waking up whether Jessica slept or not. She thinks about canceling. She could email her boss right now, say she's sick, spend the day in bed recovering. But she knows she won't. She's never canceled anything in her life. That's part of the problem. Here's the thing about being a high achiever with anxiety. You get really good at functioning while falling apart. You show up to meetings with dark circles and nobody notices because your presentation is perfect. You answer emails at 2 a.m. and people call you dedicated. You learn to perform wellness while secretly wondering if you're slowly breaking. Jessica showers. She gets dressed. She puts on makeup to hide the evidence of the night. She makes coffee she won't drink. She does all the things a functional adult does before a big day. And all morning, the question follows her. Asterisk, what if? Asterisk, what if the traffic is bad? What if the elevator is slow? What if the receptionist forgets her name? What if her boss introduces her wrong? What if the client has already decided and this whole thing is just for show? The question isn't the problem. The question is neutral. It's just 2 words. What if? The problem is which answer her brain chooses. By 8 a.m., Jessica is standing outside the Gunderson building in Midtown Manhattan. It's a glass tower that reflects the sky. She can see her own reflection in the lobby doors, a woman in a navy blazer, holding a leather portfolio, looking smaller than she should. The July heat presses down. A taxi honks somewhere behind her. A man in a suit rushes past, coffee in hand, late for something. She takes a breath. The air smells like hot asphalt and pretzels from a cart down the street. And then, for just a second, something shifts. A different question appears, not loud, not demanding, just ... there. Asterisk, what if it goes right? Asterisk, the thought is so foreign that Jessica almost laughs. What if it goes right? What does that even look like? She tries to picture it. The conference room, the smiling faces, the moment when someone says yes. She can almost see it, like a photograph developing in slow motion. Then the anxiety rushes back in. Asterisk, don't get ahead of yourself. Don't jinx it. Stay focused. Stay worried. Worrying is preparation. Asterisk, but the other question lingers. Just barely. Asterisk, what if it goes right? Asterisk, Jessica doesn't know it yet. But that tiny question, the one she almost didn't let herself ask, is the beginning of something. Not a solution. Not a cure. Just a crack in the fortress. Just enough light to see that maybe, possibly, There's another way to use those two little words. She walks into the building. The lobby is cold and smells like expensive perfume and air conditioning. The elevator doors open. She steps inside. And the story continues from there. But here's what matters for right now. For you, wherever you are reading this, that moment at 3 a.m., the one where you're trapped with your worst fears, that's not a warning system. That's a habit, a chemical loop your brain learned because somewhere along the way, worrying felt productive, felt protective, felt like the responsible thing to do. It's not. The research is clear. A 2024 study from Stanford tracked to groups of people facing high-pressure situations. One group was told to prepare by imagining everything that could go wrong. The other group was told to imagine everything that could go right. The first group performed worse, felt worse, and recovered slower from setbacks. The second group, they were more creative, more resilient, and actually more realistic about actual risks. Because here's the secret the worrying habit doesn't want you to know. When you ask what if it goes right, you're not being naive. You're not ignoring danger. You're training your brain to see possibilities instead of just threats. And a brain that sees possibilities is a brain that can actually solve problems. So tonight, when you're lying awake at 3 a.m., staring at your own ceiling, and the old question comes knocking, what if I fail? What if I'm not enough? What if everything falls apart? Try something different. Ask the other one instead. Just once. What if it goes right? See what happens. The elevator doors closed and Jessica caught her reflection in the polished steel. She looked fine. That was the strange part. After 3 hours of staring at the ceiling, after the 4 a.m. scroll through everyone else's highlight reels, after the warm water and the tangled sheets and the racing heart, she looked completely fine. Hair done, blazer pressed, portfolio in hand. No one would ever know. The elevator chimed at 23. The doors opened onto a reception area that smelled like fresh flowers and new carpet. A young woman with a headset smiled from behind a curved desk. Jessica Chen for the Gunderson meeting. That's me, right this way. They're just finishing up in the conference room. Jessica followed her down a hallway lined with framed photographs of stores. Gunderson locations in Boston, Philadelphia, Providence. Families shopping, employees smiling. The whole carefully constructed image of retail success. Jessica wondered how many of those people had slept the night before. The conference room door was heavy glass. Through it, she could see her boss already inside, laughing at something someone said. Mark was good at that. The easy laugh, the comfortable presence in rooms where millions of dollars quietly changed hands. He'd been doing this for 20 years and still slept like a baby. Jessica hated him a little for that. Then the door opened and it was time. The next 2 hours passed in a blur she'd remember later in fragments. The way the client's creative director nodded slowly when Jessica explained their Q3 strategy. The squeak of a marker on the whiteboard when she diagrammed the customer journey. The heat of the overhead lights and the dryness in her mouth, and the moment when someone asked a question she hadn't prepared for and she answered anyway, smoothly, like she'd known it was coming. And then it was over. Handshakes, smiles. We'll be in touch by Friday. The elevator ride down. The burst of July heat when she stepped outside. The relief so intense it made her dizzy. She'd done it. She'd survived. That night, Jessica slept 11 hours straight. No 3 a.m. ceiling staring. No scrolling. No spiral. Just deep, dreamless sleep. The kind you earn by facing down something scary and walking out the other side. When she woke up Wednesday morning, she felt like a different person. She made coffee and actually drank it. She answered emails without that tight feeling in her chest. She even went for a run along the East River, watching the Manhattan skyline glint in the morning sun, feeling the sweat on her skin and the rhythm of her feet on the path. The call came Friday at 2:47 p.m. Mark's voice on the phone sounded wrong, too careful, too measured. Hey, Jess, you got a minute? She knew before he said it. Somehow, she knew. They went with Henderson Creative. Said they wanted a more established agency for this phase of their growth. Nothing to do with your presentation. You did great in there. Everyone said so. Jessica said all the right things. Okay. Thanks for letting me know. Appreciate you fighting for us. All the professional responses she'd learned over a decade in business. She hung up and sat very still at her desk. The office hummed around her. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, someone laughing in the kitchen. Normal sounds, regular Friday sounds, and Jessica sat frozen in the middle of it all, staring at her computer screen without seeing anything. Here's what happened next. Not the dramatic version, the real version. First, her chest got tight. The same tightness from 3 a.m., but sharper now. Then her hands went cold. Then her brain started doing what brains do when they're scared, looking for an explanation, a reason, something to hold on to. Asterisk, what if I'd said more about the digital strategy? What if I'd pushed back on that question about Q3? What if Mark had introduced me differently? What if? Asterisk, the thoughts came so fast she couldn't catch them. Each one a new path to the same destination. This was her fault. Somehow, someway, she'd lost this account and now everyone would know she wasn't good enough. She spent the rest of Friday in a fog. Went through the motions. Took the subway home. Heated up leftovers she didn't taste. Stared at Netflix without watching. Fell asleep on the couch at 10 and woke up at 3 a.m. again. Right on schedule. Saturday was worse. By Sunday afternoon, Jessica had constructed an entire alternate universe in her head. One where she'd prepared differently, spoken differently, been different. In this universe, the client said yes. In this universe, she got the promotion. In this universe, she was the person on LinkedIn posting about dreams coming true. But she wasn't in that universe. She was in this one, and this one felt like a cage. Here's what Jessica didn't know yet. She wasn't lazy. She wasn't weak. She wasn't even particularly anxious. Not compared to the millions of other high achievers, doing the same mental gymnastics every day. She was trapped in something psychologists call preemptive regret. It sounds complicated, but it's actually simple. Preemptive regret is when your brain tries to protect you from future pain by simulating every possible failure in advance. The logic goes like this. If I can imagine the worst that could happen, I'll be ready when it does. If I'm worrying enough now, I won't be caught off guard later. The problem is, it doesn't work. A 2022 study from the University of Pennsylvania tracked to groups of people facing uncertain outcomes. One group was encouraged to prepare by mentally rehearsing potential failures. The other group was told to focus on concrete preparation steps. The first group reported higher anxiety, lower confidence, and actually performed worse when things went wrong. They'd spent so much energy imagining failure that they had nothing left for adapting when failure actually arrived. But here's the part that would have mattered to Jessica if she'd known it. The same study found that preemptive regret isn't a personality flaw. It's a learned pattern, and learned patterns can be unlearned. She didn't know that yet. She just knew she felt terrible. Monday morning came anyway. Jessica went back to the office because that's what you do. She walked past the conference room where she'd pitched. She smiled at colleagues who'd heard the news. She sat at her desk and opened her email and tried to pretend everything was normal. Around 11 a.m., Mark stopped by. He leaned against the wall next to her cubicle, coffee in hand, looking like he had something to say. Hey, he said. You okay? I'm fine. You did good in there. I meant that. I know. Mark nodded. Didn't leave. Just stood there for a minute, stirring his coffee with a little wooden stick. Then he said something Jessica would remember for a long time. I lost the biggest account of my career in 2014. Multi-million-dollar retail chain. Spent 6 months on the pitch. Got a call on a Tuesday morning telling me they went with someone else. I spent the next 3 months convincing myself it was because I'd worn the wrong tie. Jessica almost laughed. That's ridiculous. I know. But at the time, it made perfect sense. My brain needed a reason. Any reason. The real reason was boring. Their new CEO had a brother-in-law at the other agency. Happens all the time. But boring reasons don't feel as satisfying as blaming yourself. He pushed off the wall. Point is, you're going to spend the next few weeks building a case against yourself. Every little thing you did wrong will get magnified. Every question you could have answered better will play on repeat. That's just what brains do. But it's not the truth. It's just a story you're telling. He walked away, left Jessica sitting there with her email and her thoughts and a tiny crack in the fortress she'd been building. That evening, she did something different. Instead of going straight home to Spiral, she walked to a coffee shop in the West Village, sat by the window, ordered something with oat milk and cinnamon, watched people pass by on the sidewalk. A woman power walked past with a stroller. A guy on a skateboard weaved through pedestrians. Two teenagers shared earbuds and laughed at something on a phone. Normal people living normal lives, none of them knowing or caring that Jessica Chen had lost the Gunderson pitch. The coffee was good. The cinnamon smelled like the holidays. The late afternoon sun made everything look soft and golden. And for just a moment, the thoughts stopped, not because she'd solved anything, not because she'd figured out the secret to anxiety, just because she'd given herself permission to exist in the world without performing or preparing or regretting. The moment passed. The thoughts came back, but the crack in the fortress stayed. 60 seconds. The thoughts were still there, but something was shifting. Not the thoughts themselves, the space around them, like she could see them more clearly now. Just thoughts, just words, not emergencies. 75 seconds. She took a breath without meaning to, a real breath, deep into her belly, the kind you take when you're not thinking about breathing. 90 seconds. The timer went off. Jessica opened her eyes. The email was still there. The tightness in her chest was still there, but softer now, more like a memory of tightness than the real thing. She read the email one more time. It was just an email. 7 lines asking a normal question from a normal client on a normal Tuesday afternoon. Nothing more, nothing less. She typed a response. Simple, direct. Hi team. Q for calendar is finalized and attached here. Let me know if you have any questions. Attach the file. Hit send. The whole thing took 45 seconds. She sat back in her chair and stared at the wall for a while. The car alarm had stopped at some point. The room was quiet except for the hum of her computer and the distant sound of traffic. August sunlight still slanted through the window. Dust motes still floated in the air. Nothing had changed. Everything had changed. That night, Jessica couldn't stop thinking about 90 seconds. Such a small amount of time. Less than 2 minutes. The length of a song. The time it takes to microwave popcorn. And yet her whole life had been shaped by what she did in those 90 seconds, or more accurately, what she didn't do. She'd spent years feeding her anxiety, instead of letting it pass. Years treating every uncomfortable feeling like a fire that needed to be put out immediately, when really, most of those feelings were just waves. They rose, they peaked, they fell, all on their own. All she had to do was wait. The next morning, she tested it again. Another email, this time from her boss, asking if she could take the lead on a new project. Her first instinct, panic. Asterisk, what if I'm not ready? What if I fail again? What if everyone realizes they made a mistake asking me? Asterisk, she set the timer. 90 seconds. Closed her eyes. Same horrible first 30 seconds. Same screaming brain. Same urge to do something. Anything. To make the feeling stop. But this time, she noticed something else. Underneath the panic, there was something almost like curiosity. Asterisk, what will happen if I just sit here? What will it feel like when the wave passes? Asterisk 60 seconds. The thoughts got quieter, not gone, just less urgent. 90 seconds. She opened her eyes. The feeling was still there, but it was smaller now, manageable. She could see it instead of being inside it. She wrote back to her boss. Happy to take the lead. Let's chat next week about timelines. Another 45 seconds. Another small victory. Here's what the research actually says about this. In 2023, a team at Stanford did a study on something called urge surfing. It's a technique originally developed for addiction treatment. The idea that cravings are like waves that peak and then pass if you don't act on them. The Stanford team applied it to anxiety and found something remarkable. People who practiced urge surfing for just 5 minutes a day for 2 weeks reported a 40% reduction in anxiety symptoms. Not because their circumstances changed. Not because they got better at solving problems. Just because they got better at waiting. The study used a simple timer. That's it. When participants felt anxious, they set a timer for 90 seconds and focused on their breath until it went off. By the time the timer beeped, the initial spike had passed and they could think clearly again. 40%. From a phone timer. Jessica didn't know about that study yet. She just knew that something was shifting. Slowly, imperceptibly, like ice melting on a frozen lake, where you can't see it happening, but eventually the whole surface changes. Thursday afternoon, she got another email. This one from a client she'd been avoiding for weeks. A difficult conversation about a project that had gone over budget. The kind of email that would have sent her into a 3-hour spiral 6 months ago. She felt the familiar tightness. The cold hands. The clenched jaw. She set the timer. 90 seconds later, she opened the email and read it. Really read it. Not just scanned it for threats. The client wasn't angry. They weren't blaming her. They just wanted to talk about solutions. She scheduled a call for Monday. Responded with her availability. Hit send. Then she sat there for a minute, feeling something she couldn't quite name. Not happiness. Not relief exactly. Something quieter. Something like trust. Trust that she could handle whatever came next. Trust that she didn't have to have everything figured out right this second. Trust that 90 seconds of waiting was sometimes more powerful than 90 minutes of worrying. Friday night came. Dinner in Williamsburg with Maya, the place with the patio, just like she'd promised. Fairy lights strung overhead. A warm breeze off the river. The smell of pizza dough and garlic and summer. Maya ordered wine. Jessica ordered water. They talked about kids and work and the new apartment Maya's sister was buying in Astoria. Normal things. Easy things. At some point, Maya looked at her across the table. You seem different. Different how? I don't know. Lighter. Less like you're waiting for something bad to happen. Jessica thought about it. The emails. The timers. The 90 seconds of sitting with feelings instead of running from them. Maybe I am, she said. They talked about other things after that. But the moment stayed with Jessica, walking to the subway afterward, past the bars and the boutiques and the people laughing on street corners. She realized something. For the first time in months, she wasn't thinking about tomorrow. She was just here. Now, in the warm September night, with the lights of the city reflected in the river and the sound of someone playing guitar somewhere down the block, the thoughts would come back. They always did, but now she had something she didn't have before, a timer, a technique, a reminder that feelings are just visitors. They arrive, they stay for a while, they leave. All you have to do is wait them out. Here's what Jessica learned in those 90-second experiments. The same thing the Stanford researchers found. The same thing anyone discovers when they stop fighting their own mind and start observing it instead. Anxiety, in a problem to solve. It's a wave to ride. It peaks, it breaks, it recedes. Every single time. The only question is whether you'll grab a board and ride it to shore, or let it pull you under. That night, lying in bed, Jessica set her phone on the nightstand and closed her eyes. No scrolling, no spiraling, just breathing in the dark, listening to the city hum outside her window. At 3 a.m., she woke up. The old pattern tried to start. The thoughts lined up, ready to run their usual marathon. She set the timer. 90 seconds, closed her eyes, and waited. The wave came. The wave peaked. The wave passed. She fell back asleep. When she woke up Saturday morning, sunlight was streaming through her window and her phone showed 8:47 a.m., the longest stretch of sleep she'd had in months. She lay there for a while, not moving, just feeling what it felt like to be rested, to be present, to be okay. Then she got up, made coffee, and started her day. 90 seconds. That's all it took to begin. October arrived in New York like apology for summer. Cool mornings, blue skies, the kind of weather that made you remember why you put up with the rest of it. Jessica noticed it now. She hadn't noticed things like weather for a long time. The 90-second trick had become a habit. Not a perfect habit, not a magic solution, just a thing she did now when the old feelings showed up, which they still did. Every day, sometimes every hour. But something else was happening too. Something she hadn't expected. The more she practiced waiting out the waves, the more she started noticing when they were coming. Little signs her body gave her before the full flood arrived. The way her shoulders crept up toward her ears. The way her breathing got shallow. The way her jaw clenched like she was preparing for a fight. She started keeping notes. Not formally, just observations. Monday morning before the team meeting, shoulders tight. Wednesday afternoon after a difficult call, jaw sore from clenching. Friday at 3 p.m., always at 3 p.m. for some reason, that familiar coldness in her hands. The patterns were so obvious once she started looking. And looking itself was the change. By mid-October, Jessica had developed something like a system, not a rigid set of rules, just a few things she did every day, whether she felt like it or not. Small things, manageable things, the kind of things that seemed almost too simple to matter until you added them up over time. The first thing happened at 7 a.m., not 5 a.m. like the LinkedIn influencers recommended. Not 4:30 a.m. like that guy who always posted about his ice baths. Just 7 a.m., when her actual alarm went off, when the October light was just starting to creep through her blinds, when she could hear her neighbors making coffee and running water and living their normal lives. She'd lie there for a minute, just 1 minute, and before she looked at her phone, before she checked email or Slack or any of the other things that were already waiting for her, she'd ask one question. What if today goes right? Not out loud, just in her head. A tiny question directed at a future that hadn't happened yet. Some days the question felt ridiculous. Some days her brain answered with a long list of reasons today would definitely not go right. But she asked it anyway. Every morning, 7 a.m., before anything else. The second thing happened around lunchtime. Jessica worked in an office with 47 other people. Open plan. High ceilings, lots of glass, the kind of space designed to look modern and feel collaborative, but actually just meant you could hear everyone's phone calls all day long. By noon, her brain was usually full, emails, deadlines, the background noise of other people's conversations, all the little inputs that built up like sediment until she couldn't think straight. So she started something new. Every day at 1 p.m., she'd close her laptop. Not put it to sleep, not just lower the screen, close it, the physical act of ending something. Then she'd take out a piece of paper, any paper, a sticky note, the back of an envelope, a page torn from the notebook she kept for client meetings, and she'd write down every worry currently circling in her head. What if the Miller project goes over budget? What if Mark didn't like my presentation this morning? What if I forgot to respond to that email from legal? What if? She'd write them all down. No filtering, no judging, just getting them out of her head and onto the page. Then she'd fold the paper. Once, twice, 3 times until it was a small square, and she'd put it in a drawer, not throw it away. That felt too final, too scary. Just put it somewhere else. A physical container for the mental noise. The drawer was her bottom desk drawer, the one that also held old phone chargers and expired granola bars and a single shoe no one could explain. Every day, another folded paper joined the collection. Every day, her head felt slightly lighter. The third thing happened at night, 9 p.m., not earlier, not later, just the hour when the city started to slow down and the sounds outside her window changed from traffic to something quieter. Jessica would stand in front of the bathroom mirror. The same mirror she used every morning for makeup and every night for skincare. But now she used it for something else. She'd look at herself. Really look. Not the critical look she'd practiced for years, searching for flaws. Just a look. And she'd ask one more question. What would the Jessica, who isn't afraid, do right now? Some nights the answer was obvious. The Jessica, who isn't afraid, would reply to that text from her mom. The one she'd been avoiding for 3 days, because she didn't have the energy to explain why she still wasn't dating anyone. The Jessica, who isn't afraid, would just answer. So she did. Some nights the answer was smaller. The Jessica, who isn't afraid, would prep her coffee maker for tomorrow morning so she didn't have to do it half asleep. So she did that too. Some nights the answer was bigger. The Jessica, who isn't afraid would send that difficult email she'd been drafting for weeks. The one pushing back on an unrealistic deadline. The one that might make someone unhappy, but needed to be sent anyway. She didn't always do the bigger thing, but she always asked the question, and somehow, just asking it made the smaller things easier. The first week of this new routine was rough. Tuesday morning, her 7 a.m. question got interrupted by a notification from work. Someone had emailed at 6:47 a.m. with a quick question that was never quick. She looked at her phone. She answered the email. She forgot to ask herself anything at all. Wednesday at 1 p.m., she had back-to-back meetings and never made it back to her desk. The worries piled up in her head instead of on paper. By 4 p.m. she could feel them pressing against her skull like to many people in a small room. Thursday night at 9 p.m., she fell asleep on the couch and woke up at 2 a.m. with her neck stiff and her phone dead and the whole routine broken. The old voice came back immediately. See, you can't even do this right. 3 simple things and you failed at all of them. What's wrong with you? Jessica lay on the couch in the dark, listening to her own breathing, feeling the familiar tightness start to build. The 90-second timer was across the room on the kitchen counter. Her phone was dead. She had nothing but herself and the thoughts. So she just lay there and waited. The tightness came. The thoughts came. The voice kept talking. And then, after a while, they went away. Not because she did anything, just because that's what waves do. She got up at 3 a.m., charged her phone, went to bed, woke up at 7 a.m. to her actual alarm, asked herself the question, started over. That was the thing nobody told her about change. It wasn't a straight line. It wasn't a transformation. It was just showing up again after you failed, over and over, forever. By the 3rd week, something shifted, not in her head, in her calendar. Her friend Maya had sent her a link to something called a walking club, just a group of people who met at 8 a.m. on Saturdays in Prospect Park and walked together for an hour. No agenda, no cost, just walking. Jessica almost deleted the message. She didn't know these people. She didn't like groups. She had a million reasons to stay home, but the question came anyway. What would the Jessica who isn't afraid do right now? She went. The park that Saturday morning was golden. October at its best. Leaves turning. Air crisp. The kind of day that made you glad to be alive even if you weren't sure you were. There were 12 people at the meeting spot. Various ages. Various professions. A woman who worked in tech. A guy who taught high school. Someone's dog who didn't care about any of it and just wanted to chase squirrels. They walked. They talked about nothing important. The weather, a new restaurant in the neighborhood, whether the Mets had any chance next season, and somewhere around the mile mark, walking beside people whose names she barely knew, Jessica felt something she couldn't name at first. It took her another half mile to figure it out. She wasn't performing. She wasn't trying to impress anyone or prove anything or worrying about what they thought of her. She was just walking, in a park, on a Saturday, like a normal person doing a normal thing. The feeling was so unfamiliar it took her a while to recognize it as peace. She kept going to the walking club. Every Saturday, same time, same place, same group of strangers slowly becoming not strangers. She learned their names. They learned hers. They started saving a spot for her by the big oak tree at the entrance. The research on this is clear. A 2024 study from NYU looked at people trying to change their anxiety patterns alone versus with others. The alone group improved. The with others group improved twice as much. Something about shared experience. Something about seeing other people struggle and keep going. Something about not being the only one. Jessica didn't know the research. She just knew that Saturday mornings became something she looked forward to. Something that made the rest of the week easier. By November, the routine had settled into something almost automatic. 7 a.m. What if today goes right? Sometimes she answered. Sometimes she didn't. But she always asked. 1 p.m. Worries on paper. Folded. In the drawer. The drawer was getting full now. A whole history of concerns that had mostly never happened. 9 p.m. Mirror question. Sometimes small actions. Sometimes big ones. Always the question. And Saturdays. walking, talking, being part of something. The changes were tiny, so tiny she barely noticed them happening, but they added up. She slept better. Not perfect, just better. She answered emails faster without the usual spiral. She stopped dreading Monday mornings quite so much. She laughed more, not at anything specific, just more. One Tuesday afternoon in mid-November, Mark stopped by her desk again. Same spot as before, same coffee in hand, same look on his face. "You're different," he said. "You said that already. Months ago, I know. But it's more now. You used to walk around like you were waiting for something to hit you. Now you walk around like, I don't know, like you're actually here." Jessica thought about it. The mornings, the papers, the mirror, the park, all of it added up to something she couldn't quite explain. "I learned some stuff," she said. "Like what? Like 90 seconds? Like writing things down? Like asking different questions?" Mark nodded like that made sense. "My wife meditates. Same kind of thing. I think she's been trying to get me to do it for years. Does it work?" "Haven't tried. Too busy worrying." He smiled. A real smile, not the professional one he used with clients. "Maybe I should ask her about it." He walked away. Jessica watched him go and thought about all the people walking around with their own 90-second waves, their own full drawers, their own questions they'd never thought to ask. That night at 9 p.m., she stood in front of the mirror. The same face, but something was different now. The face looked back at her differently, softer, less afraid. What would the Jessica who'd been afraid do right now? The answer came immediately. She'd write this down. Not for anyone else, just for herself. A record of what she'd learned so far. A reminder for the days when she forgot. She sat down at her kitchen table with a notebook and a pen. The November wind rattled the windows. Her neighbor's dog barked at something. The city hummed along outside like it always did. And Jessica wrote. She wrote about the 3 a.m. ceiling and the tangled sheets. She wrote about the Gunderson pitch and the 6 weeks after. She wrote about 90 seconds and a phone timer and the first time she felt a wave pass instead of pull her under. She wrote about 7 a.m. questions and 1 p.m. papers and 9 p.m. mirrors. She wrote about Saturday mornings in the park with people who didn't know her resume or her title or any of the things she used to think defined her. December in New York is its own kind of magic, the kind that hits you differently depending on where you're standing when you notice it. For Jessica, it happened on a Saturday morning in Prospect Park. Same walking club, same group of people, same route around the lake. But something had shifted in the weeks since she'd started showing up. The trees were bare now. The air had that sharp edge that made you pull your coat tighter. And the woman walking beside her, the one who taught high school, was telling a story about her students that made Jessica laugh so hard she almost tripped over a root. She caught herself, kept walking, kept laughing. And somewhere between the boathouse and the big hill, she realized she hadn't thought about anxiety in 3 days. Not because it wasn't there, but because it had stopped being the main character in her story. That's the thing nobody tells you about change. It doesn't arrive with fireworks. It sneaks up on you during ordinary moments when you're not looking for it. When you're just living your life and suddenly notice the life you're living looks nothing like the one you used to have. The tangible benefits showed up first in small ways. Sleep. For one, Jessica used to track her sleep on her phone like it was a competitive sport. Hours logged, quality scores, deep sleep percentages, all the data that made her feel like she was doing something about a problem she couldn't control. Now she just slept. Not perfectly, not every night, but most nights. The kind of sleep where you close your eyes and open them and it's morning and you didn't notice the in-between part. Energy, for another. Not the jittery energy of caffeine and cortisol. Just steady fuel that lasted through the day. She noticed it most at 3 p.m., the old danger zone when she used to hit a wall and reach for sugar and spiral into the evening. Now 3 p.m. was just another hour. Nothing special, nothing scary. Focus, too. The kind of focus that let her read an email once and understand it. The kind that let her sit through meetings without her mind wandering to all the things that could go wrong. The kind that made her better at her job in ways her boss was starting to notice. Mark noticed officially on a Tuesday in mid-December. He called her into his office, which used to terrify her, and closed the door, which used to terrify her more. But she sat down in the chair across from his desk and waited, curious instead of scared. "I've been watching you," he said, then laughed. "That sounds creepy. I mean, I've been watching your work. The last few months. Something's different." Jessica waited. "That Miller project you took over in September. The fitness chain. They called me last week. Said you've been the best point of contact they've had in years. Asked if you could be permanent lead on their account." "I already am permanent lead." "I know. But they wanted to make sure. Clients don't do that. They don't ask for specific people by name. They just complain until someone fixes it." He leaned back in his chair. "There's a senior account director position opening in March. I'm recommending you for it." Jessica felt something in her chest. Not the tightness she used to feel. Something warmer, fuller, like a room filling with light. "Thank you," she said, and meant it. Walking back to her desk, past the open plan and the glass walls, and the 47 other people living their own lives, she thought about how different this moment felt from the Gunderson loss. That had been 6 months ago. Half a year, a lifetime. She'd spent those 6 months learning to ask different questions, and somewhere along the way, the questions had started answering themselves. The ripple effect showed up in places she hadn't expected. Her apartment, for one. She used to let things pile up. Dishes in the sink, mail on the counter, laundry waiting until Sunday night became a crisis. Now she just did them. Not because she'd developed amazing discipline, just because she had the mental space to notice when things needed doing. Her friendships, for another. She used to cancel plans at the last minute, overwhelmed by the thought of being social after a week of being overwhelmed. Now she looked forward to them. Thursday night dinner with Maya, Saturday morning walking club, Sunday afternoon coffee with whoever showed up. Small things, regular things, the fabric of a life. Her family, too. Her mom had called last week, just to talk, and Jessica had let her. Hadn't rushed off the phone, hadn't felt that familiar irritation at being interrupted, had just listened to her mom talk about book club and the neighbors and the weather back home in Ohio. When she hung up, she realized she'd been smiling. The warning came on a Wednesday afternoon in January. New year, new projects, new pressure. Jessica was sitting in a meeting with the Miller team, discussing Q1 goals, when someone asked a question she didn't have an answer for. The old feeling flickered, just for a second, that familiar tightness in her chest, the cold hands, the urge to spiral. She noticed it immediately. That was the difference now. She noticed. The meeting continued. Someone else answered the question. Jessica sat there, feeling the wave rise, waiting to see what would happen next. What happened next was nothing. The wave peaked. The wave passed. She answered the next question like nothing had happened. Later, walking home through the January cold, she thought about that moment. The old Jessica would have spent the rest of the day replaying it. What if they think I'm incompetent? What if I lose this account too? What if everyone finds out I'm faking it? The new Jessica just kept walking, past the bodega on the corner, past the guy selling roasted nuts from a cart, past the couple arguing outside the subway entrance. Normal life. Moving forward, the new challenges at this level were different. Not harder exactly, just different. The stakes were higher now. The senior account director role came with more responsibility, more meetings, more decisions, more opportunities for things to go wrong. The old Jessica would have seen that as proof she was right to worrying. The new Jessica saw it as proof she was growing. The doubts still showed up. Every day, sometimes every hour. But they showed up differently now. Less like commands and more like suggestions. Less like facts and more like opinions. She could listen to them or not. Most days, she chose not. The questions still showed up too. But she'd trained them so well, they'd started working for her instead of against her. What if I fail? Became what if I learn something either way? What if they don't like me? Became what if some people do and some people don't, and that's just how it works? What if I'm not good enough? Became what if good enough isn't the point? The research backs this up. A 2024 study from Columbia tracked people who'd successfully reduced their anxiety patterns over 6 months. The ones who maintained their progress weren't the ones who'd eliminated negative thoughts. They were the ones who changed their relationship to those thoughts. They still felt fear. They just didn't let fear drive. The study called it cognitive reappraisal. Jessica called it survival. By February, the promotion was official. Senior Account Director, Corner Office. Well, sort of. A corner of the floor with a window that actually opened. She could stick her hand out and feel the air. Small victories. The team threw a little party. Cake in the conference room. Cheap champagne in plastic cups. People saying nice things she mostly believed. Maya showed up with flowers. Mark gave a speech that was actually funny. Someone played music from a phone speaker. Standing there, in the middle of it all, surrounded by people who'd watched her change without knowing they were watching, Jessica felt something she couldn't name at first. It took her a minute to find the word. Gratitude. Not for the promotion, for the person she'd become on the way to getting it. The walking club threw their own celebration that Saturday. Same place, same time, same route around the lake. But this time someone brought bagels and someone else brought coffee in a thermos, and they all stood around the big oak tree eating breakfast. Together in the February cold, the high school teacher raised her paper cup to Jessica for showing up every Saturday, even the cold ones. Everyone cheered. The dog barked. A jogger ran past and smiled at the scene. Jessica stood there, bagel in one hand, coffee in the other, and thought about how strange life was. A year ago, she couldn't sleep. A year ago, she couldn't answer emails. A year ago, she was building fortresses out of cardboard worries. Now she was standing in a park with people who knew her name, eating breakfast outside in February, not caring about the cold. The question came automatically now. It didn't need a timer or a mirror or a specific time of day. It just arrived, like an old friend who knew where you lived. What if it goes right? She looked around at the group, at the bare trees, at the gray sky that might snow later, at the dog chasing squirrels like it was the most important job in the world. It's going right, she thought. Right now. This is what right looks like. The call to action, uncomplicated. It's not a 7-step program or a 12-week course or anything you have to buy. It's just a question. One question you can ask yourself today, right now, wherever you're reading this. What if it goes right? Not about everything, not about your whole life, just about one thing. One small thing you've been avoiding because you're scared of how it might turn out. What if that conversation goes right? What if that email gets a good response? What if that risk pays off? What if you're capable of more than you think? Ask it once, just once. See what happens?